threw the agenda together, but was trying to get something together fast. To the extent this doesn't match what we're going to do, we can do a lot of things under 5 other discussion points. But I think the biggest thing is for us to get up to speed, John, on where you are, see what you've done. Looks like you've given a packet to do that. Do you want to maybe give us an overview? Is that
Sure.
That's the best thing? The floor is yours.
So in the
John,
package,
thank you for putting all this together this
Yeah.
way. I know it's been a lot of, everyone knows it's been a lot of work, so thank
Yeah.
you for jumping in.
Probably writing it's been the easiest part of your job.
yes, it has. A lot of customer interaction these
As it
past
were.
couple of months.
Living the good life.
Yep, living the dream. So in the packet, I have the proposed ordinance changes additions. I have another sheet that is entitled Harbor Master FYIs. There is a Harbor Master page on the town website. These are some suggested things that I'm going to add to it. The next is the current set of ordinances. Then there's the Harbor Master page, which I just mentioned. Then there is the current standards for moorings in Darien waters. And then the last page is about littoral rights. The reason I added that is just to, there's probably a couple of references to that. And this gives you the different types of littoral rights that there are for our residents that live on the water.
I'll just give a small interjection just for new members here. The recommended minimum standards for single point moorings in Darien waters, that's the only piece of paper the Coastal Commission has had involvement in. We've written that every year and updated it. Sorry, every year it's been out, we've looked at it. Yeah, this one, yeah, and updated it. So other than that, all these other ordinances and things are things we've not had review of or a voice in, so this is new territory.
Okay. All right, so I'll start. So what I've written here has come about as a result of, trying to manage the harbor and coming across different situations within the harbor that aren't completely covered by our ordinances. I know from the previous harbor master, I know how he managed things, but none of it was ever actually, and it's very similar to the way I'm managing it. I've changed very, very little. But there are situations that have come about that I can't manage due to the limitations of the ordinances. And that's where this first page comes in. And the biggest, right, I'll read them out loud. There will be 2 types of moorings permitted: berthing and day moorings. Berthing moorings will be defined as a mooring where a vessel is permanently stationed during the boating season. A day mooring will be defined as a mooring that is used for anchorage when the captain is on the vessel and not left unattended. Norotan Harbor, Darien Harbor, and Norotan Bay will be defined as berthing harbors. All other Darien harbors can be berthing or day harbors. So, in our current ordinances, all of the harbors have been managed differently, but they haven't, it's not stipulated anywhere in our ordinances. So, Ziegler's and Scott's Cove have always been treated as day moorings. There are a few berthing moorings in there because the people that live in the area who have littoral rights might have a permanent, berthing mooring in Scott's or Ziegler's. Darien Harbor and Norotan Harbor have always been treated as berthing harbors, but there's never been anything stipulated. And that has come about, and the reason I'm defining this is because in our current ordinances there's some ambiguity. There's no comparisons drawn between the different harbors and the way they have been managed. So you have primarily day harbors, and then you have berthing harbors. The previous harbor master did enforce them differently. Probably brought it up in several coastal commission meetings where, day harbors where you go for the day, you come back. End of the day, you stay at your berthing mooring. Nothing stipulated on how that is managed in our ordinances. So I wanted to draw that out and just clearly define it to continue with the way that it has been managed.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been addressed distinctively. I mean, we've always sort of known there are different practices, but I never heard the prior harbor master say that there's A and there's B, and I'm doing different things in each. So this is welcome classification to get our minds thinking in certain ways.
Right.
Do you have berthing, I guess you have berthing, there is no day harbor, or day mooring harbor. That's not the plan, so you're gonna be berthing or berthing and day harbor, correct?
For the other harbors, so you've got, for Scotts Cove could be berthing or day. It's primarily almost all day. Same thing with Ziegler's. We might have only one person in there now that actually has it as a berthing mooring, because they have littoral rights on Long Neck Point Road. So we have one person in there that I'm aware of. We have one person that's been there for years, but has been a renter at Great Island. So I don't know how that will pan out.
That's interesting. That gets a point that, like, this is a quick offshoot. I would not like to see Ziegler Cove become all berthing moorings, unless you have that littoral right. That would change its characterization. That we mainly have it be sort of recreational day mooring area. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to get into Ziegler's Cove in a little more depth, because in light of the fact that Great Island has been purchased, it's already a busy harbor, and it's going to get busier. So there's always been issues with. I'll get
jumped a little bit.
Right. One of the things, bullet point number 3, with an extensive wait list, it is necessary for the harbor master to mandate the use of permitted moorings in a berthing harbor. If you are stationing, with parentheses, docking or mooring your vessel elsewhere during the season, you must give up your mooring permit. If your vessel is going to be absent for more than 3 weeks during a season, the permitted mooring holder will need to notify the harbor master in writing with your departure date, expected return date, and an explanation of the long absence. All permitted moorings must be occupied by the permitted vessel by June 15th each year. Requests for exceptions must be made in writing to the harbor master. Now, the current ordinances only address what day the mooring has to be occupied, which is June 15th. But there's nothing about usage. So we have situations where permit holders in Darien Harbor show up on the 15th, and then their boats are kept elsewhere for the entire season, leaving the moorings empty for the entire season. Some people do relinquish when they get berthing elsewhere. Some people have chosen to hang on to them. There's nothing that I can do about it.
Is that distinctly a cruising boat problem or observation, or do you see that in just small power boats?
Small power boats docked at Darien Boat Club. So they are permitted for a boat which they still own. It's on the docks of the Darien Boat Club. And because there's been no change to the permit, meaning they have the same boat, they renew it every year, I can't do anything about it.
Should you be clear in this rule that should the boat owner be absent for more than 3 weeks and not secure permission in writing, that the harbor master is within his right to reassign the mooring? In other words, the sanction's not really clear here, and it seems like you have to occupy it by June 15th, and then from June 15th through the end of the season, you can't be gone for more than 3 weeks without permission. And if you violate that, what happens? Or maybe you don't want to be clear about that.
See, to Bill's point, the topic of, he asked me about cruising. There are people who do go on, they'll take their boat cruising, and they'll be gone from the harbor for a period of time. What is the magic number? I don't know. Is 3 weeks not enough? If it's more than 3 weeks, then people who want to cruise can't.
Yeah, that was our, we had
It's-
sailboat, and I used to talk to the harbor master, and every year was a little different. And sometimes we left it up in Jamestown for 3 months, and I not think that was the best thing to do, and so just kept in touch with the harbor master. I guess that it happened too many years in a row, but there's no rule. It wasn't.
Yeah, it's the Darien Boat Club has the same issue, where people have houses elsewhere, and they'll bring their boat to another place during the season, and they're only allowed so much time off the dock before it's considered you're berthing your boat elsewhere. This real cruising really isn't berthing. I'm 3 weeks is a number that I came up with.
Yeah.
I don't know, to John's point, should there be, we could specify consequences. But if somebody wants to go cruising for the month of June, a whole month goes by, do I take the mooring away from them?
Well, if they've submitted an explanation, that sounds like that's okay. It says you can do it, but you have to notify the harbor master in writing of the departure date, expect to return, and an explanation for long absence. If they,
Oh, so you're saying
Yeah, if they
if no
don't-
explanation is given,
right,
then
if
there's
an explanation, I
consequences?
think that's probably
I see what
reasonable,
you're saying.
But if they're just gonna put
Okay.
it off and not
Yeah,
pay attention, the only reason I suggest that is that in our conversations, when we've dealt with people and then tried to take an enforcement action, usually taking away their mooring, there's been a potential perception of arbitrariness. In other words, that sanction wasn't laid out. But if you have the rules that come in and say occupied by the 15th, and if I find out that you're gone for more than 3 weeks and you don't just give me the courtesy of letting me know, I'm within my rights to reassign your mooring. So that if you do have to take that sanction, if in your judgment the case is particularly abusive, they go the entire season, that type of thing, the regulations empower you to do that, and you can say, well, it's in the approved regulations that I'm within my right as harbor master to take that action.
In a lot of the legal documents that I used to review for my job, there would always be some parenthetical that said equivalent, which permission shall not be unreasonably withheld. You guys have all read that. I mean, if a boat is out in the harbor and the family goes cruising for the month of August and lays over for the Labor Day weekend, writes John a letter saying, sorry, you'll notice that our mooring's going to be empty, but we'll be back before mid-September. That should answer John's information question, and we do not want to become known as a hostile harbor for boaters, cruisers, powerboaters, sailboaters, or any of the above.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. That protects boaters who are going to be gone, who've made a good faith effort to follow the rules and let John know. And if they do let him know, then permission wouldn't be unreasonably withheld. I think that's a great point.
yeah. Okay. Permit holders that wish to obtain a different vessel must first have it approved by the harbor master. That's already in the town's ordinances. There is no guarantee that a vessel with different specifications than the permitted vessel can be stationed at the same mooring currently permitted. It cannot be guaranteed that there will be an open space in the harbor to accommodate a different vessel. It should not be expected that the purchase of a new vessel will allow the currently permitted mooring holder to displace a waitlisted applicant on the wait list.
So my objection would be to the last sentence, because I and every boat owner I've ever met has 10-foot itis. And that includes me. And I'm in the harbor, and I've been in the harbor for ages. And my boat's always too small. And it's 20 feet, and if I go to a 30-foot cruiser, I currently, at where my boat is, at dead low tide, the water is up to my chest. So if I got a 30-foot cruising boat with a 5-foot keel, I wouldn't want to leave Darien Harbor if I could help it.
No, but you
But so I
could
should
notify,
jump the wait list.
you could notify the harbor master.
Absolutely,
And let him know that you are interested in getting a larger boat.
absolutely.
What this is based on experience that I've had so far is that someone goes out, they have a 17-foot boat to start off, and then they want to show up with a 35-footer.
Definitely.
And they expect to be in the same spot. Now that spot in the harbor is completely inappropriate for them.
Well, that would not apply to me.
Well, right. So there's only so much harbor. So where do I put you? Now, if you just, without discussion, go out and purchase another boat, and you're telling me now you want to stay in the harbor, and if it comes down between the person who's at the top of the list and is ready to have a spot in the harbor, now you just come in and just trump that person because you've been there before.
Yes.
I don't think that's fair.
What if, is it the different boat size? So let's take this in the extremes. If he's got a 30-foot boat, and he just wants to buy another 30-foot boat.
That's fine.
That's fine. It's if he wants to buy a 75-foot boat, he can't expect to be in that same spot. It's like he's in a different class, he's got to go to he's sort of, everything's anew.
If everyone were to start showing up, and some of this has happened, if everyone starts showing up with what they want without notification, now you have a mix of boats in the harbor that are bumping into each other,
Yeah,
which has been a problem in the harbor.
it has.
So this is the scenario I'm trying to address.
Yeah.
Now just because you decide to go and get a bigger boat, now I have to put you someplace else in the harbor, and somebody else has been waiting and it's their turn. But now that you've just shown up with a bigger boat, I don't think it's right that I just give the spot to you.
Like someone who's on the 75-foot boat like list, and he's been waiting for that one in the outer harbor, and
It finally
slide to him.
arises, and now this person comes in who's already been in the harbor.
So tricky, you're saying there's there's classes of moorings, and you can't necessarily...
That is something I'd like to formalize. I have not had a chance to do that. It's difficult to classify because first you have to take into consideration the size of the boats, how much water they draw,
the swing,
obstructions in the harbor. There was one other thing I wanted to add. But anyway, there's a number of factors that need to be taken into consideration. And, if you want to go bigger, sometimes that's not always, if you want to go bigger, you want to go from a 17 to a 75, there's room at the end of the harbor. But if you want to go 17 to 35 or 17 to 30, there's a long wait list for people in that size.
Absolutely. And then there's a difference between a power boat drawing 3 feet and a sailboat drawing 6.
Exactly.
This is sort of a tricky one. I have some sympathy for what Sam said, but ultimately I appreciate you having discretion because I could see these different classification systems. And in the extreme case, you wouldn't be right to get that spot. But I think my first reaction to this wasn't yours, Sam, but that your second sentence, there's no guarantee that a vessel of different specs, blah, blah, blah. I thought that ought to read stronger, that for example, the harbor master has the ultimate discretion to determine. I really think it's, from what I'm hearing you saying, you want that right to shut that guy out or
I
accommodate.
technically have it through the state.
Yeah. I
I'm
think-
responsible and I determine where vessels are stationed in the harbor.
Yeah, I think maybe stating that more clearly here instead of saying there's no guarantee. I'd like to hear you have
So
no power.
I think there's one way to actually help clear that up, and it's the first sentence. Permit holders that wish to obtain a different vessel and keep a mooring permit, must contact you. Because if they want to buy a different vessel, they can buy a different vessel, they just can't keep it in the harbor,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
I would just put that proviso in, I would put that,
Well, it's also in the current ordinances, any change to a permit, which would be a change of vessel,
vessel, yeah,
has to be approved by the harbor master first.
right?
So,
But if you put that in there, then you've made it perfectly clear that anyone who holds a mooring, if they're going to do that and continue to have a mooring, if they're gonna, if they want a different boat and they continue to have a mooring, they have to contact you.
no, I agree.
So that little change, I think, will make it a lot
I think one thing
clearer.
I should just preface here is, these are changes and additions.
Yeah.
These are gonna be added to existing verbiage that's already in.
Sure.
Because a lot of these ordinances, they're just, if you look at them, they're just one sentence.
Yeah, this gives us some,
This gives it some explanation as to why any change to the permit, this is why you need to do, you need to communicate, you need to let the harbor master know. I want to get people into the rhythm of communicating to me before they just go out and purchase whatever they want.
Right.
I think Rob's suggestion would be very helpful.
Yeah,
If I'm gonna go out and change my 19-foot into a 30-foot sailboat, I need more water and swing room. And I can't, and I know it can't sit on my current rig. I'm gonna have to upsize the ground tackle.
yeah.
I need at least 3 more feet of water. And I'm chewing up at least 10 feet more swinging off the stern than I had before. That ability to get a permitted spot in the harbor is absolutely at your discretion. And I'd be foolish, I think, to go out and buy the boat and then come and tell you I had it. But
You'd
I'm
think,
not
yes.
sure, but I'm not at all
I can confirm
sure, I'm not at
Yeah.
all sure that most people think in that sequence.
so this is a good paragraph.
There's
laying
been a
out-
number of people who have done that, who have gone out with larger vessels and then tell me.
I think I would have done that if I hadn't had this discussion, so I wonder how many other people might think, oh, I'll just go buy a boat and
Well, this-
then ask for the new permit.
The previous harbor master told me stories about when people who weren't even on the wait list, weren't even in the system, would call him up and tell him, I just bought a boat, where are you putting it?
Yeah,
And he'd be like, if you get on the list now, you're 4 to 5 years away from a mooring. And then they become irate and, anyway, so I think this adding to some of the ordinances that are already there and adding additional line items will help people understand.
Look, before anyone applies for a mooring, you're gonna send them a link, please read this for this year, or has a mooring. You're gonna read more detailed ordinances, which we're here to try to make it easier for you to put through. Once that happens, I think, mooring holder beware. I mean, these are rules, they need rules for
There
a busy harbor.
there are rules when you go into the system, but it's a checkbox.
Right.
So a lot of people, and it's a one-pager, you don't even have to scroll, so a lot of people just click, pay the 15, get on. And I would like to add links to the ordinances so that they know, what's expected of them and what to expect as far as wait list, et cetera, and what they need to do.
and when this gets finalized, we should, in our individual capacities, make sure that, for example, in my case, in Rotary Yacht Club, it goes out to the membership, you know, under a letter signed by the Commodore. And in the case of the boat club, the same thing. Thinking about buying a new boat, read the attached. And use, you know, the Darien Times would be great, Darien Patch would be great, but make the source of your heartache help.
Sure.
Let's keep moving with an overview here, just so we can.
All right, I hate to do this, one quick suggestion, which is, this strikes me as something where we don't have to do a lot of wheel reinvention. I am sure this particular nuance of what do you do when there's a boat size change with moorings has been thought about by other jurisdictions. We might, I probably looked at this, we might do well to take a look and see what other similar towns have done on that particular topic.
Get best practices.
There might be something that's already.
Wilson Cove, what do they do?
The second thing I was doing, just for presentation purposes, it might help to take the existing regulations and have sort of a from-to presentation. In other words, this is what it says now,
Or red
and
line?
this is what I'm trying to do here, so that you can see existing language and get a sense of,
Yeah,
a clearer sense of why we need to actually change this.
good idea.
Because certainly the Board of Selectmen, they're not going to be as familiar with this stuff as you guys
Yeah,
are.
a couple columns.
Yeah, just 2 columns from to.
Just interrupt for a second. Thanks for joining us. Member of the public, I take it?
Sorry.
No, you're welcome. You're
I
welcome.
just saw the meeting was going on by accident, and we have a mooring,
Super.
so I thought it would be informative. My husband's gonna come over, and I switched to take the girl to home.
Happy to have you join.
Okay.
If there's a, this document you're going through, would you have an extra copy by any chance?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So we're reviewing the proposed ordinances and changes and additions, and he's on number 5, I believe.
Yeah, we're up to number 5 now. Permitted mooring holders and waitlist applicants with a vessel. One thing that I have changed this year is the waitlist now contains waitlist applicants with boats and without boats. And the purpose of that is to help me understand where you are as far as owning a boat. You have to, when you fill out the application, if you have a boat, you need to provide the information that's in the system: registration number, make, model, color, etc. If you're on the wait list without a boat, you need to define what type of boat you're looking for. So that helps me determine, if, in lack of a better expression, class of boat you are, so that when you're on the wait list and you rise through the ranks, first off, I know what type of boat you stated you were looking for, and secondly, it helps me determine where I would put you in the harbor if you were to go get a boat.
The first part is just like the boat club, that's what they do.
Well, yeah, the boat club, yeah, you have to define, what
I'm
class
looking
you
for the
want.
17 to 20 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They define by class. We don't have a class system yet for the harbor. It's a little more difficult. Boat club has specific slips, length and width. We've got depth we have to worry about, swing, there's a whole bunch of different variables. So it just helps people. Anyway, I'll move on. So it says permanent must submit a current copy of their Connecticut DMV vessel registration for the upcoming season during the Connecticut DMV renewal process each year. Coast Guard documentation or registrations from other states will not suffice. Any vessel in Connecticut waters 61 calendar days in a year or more must be registered with the Connecticut DMV, even if it is registered in another state. So there's a number of boats in Darien Harbor with different state registrations. Not everybody that's in the harbor lives in Darien, but they still have to register the boat if it's going to be on a mooring. I'm making, my belief is if you're going to be in the harbor it's expected you're gonna be in the harbor a minimum of 61 days. Ideally, much more than that. It will be more than that. But the 61 calendar days is, what is required.
But by the state.
By the
So
state.
you're just passing through state regs, and that's helpful.
As an ordinance.
Exactly.
You just said something that I just want to make sure I understand. You said not every boat in Darien Harbor is owned by a Darien resident?
Yes, these are state waters.
Okay. I did not know that.
It is sort of surprising,
Yeah. We have New York boats in the harbor,
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island boats, but they still have to be registered in Connecticut if they're gonna be on a mooring.
What about Coast Guard documentation? That's not sufficient?
No. Connecticut, it does not override Connecticut's requirement for registration. Some states do. Connecticut is not one of them.
But can they still be part of the club when they are not residents of the town?
Well, if you're talking about Norotan Yacht Club,
No.
Darien Boat Club, no, you have to be a resident of Darien.
Okay. So we're
Yeah.
talking about Norotan Yacht Club
It could,
members that have boats from other states?
We're just talking about in the harbor.
just in the harbor, but, in Darien Harbor, you have to have some method of getting to the boat.
Okay.
So you would have to belong to Darien Boat Club, Norotan Yacht Club. You'd have to live on the water
Mhm.
in the harbor, or you would have to get get a kayak and get a permit from the town to tie up to I call it the harbor bar, where all these boats are, or all these little dinghies and kayaks are tied up.
And that is open to non-residents, the little boats?
I don't think so. I'm not positive.
So
Everyone
they can
in
be there,
my,
but no access, so they have to have their own access.
first off would be your access to the beach. So you would have to get past that first.
So
I
how
don't-
do they get to their boats?
Well, if you belong to the Yacht Club Launch Service, same thing for Darien. If you don't belong to either one of those clubs, you take a kayak from Pear Tree Point
But
Beach.
if they're not Darien residents, they cannot belong to a Darien club, the yacht club, so they have to belong to Noroton, or they don't have a way to get to their boat, right?
I guess for the most part, that's
That's the
but
case.
I don't know all the stipulations of Park and Rec about handing out permits to use that harbor bar so you can get out to your boat in the harbor. I don't know all the rules and regs about that.
How many boats are in this category? Roughly.
I get about a half a dozen people a year, maybe
So it's not-
more, that ask, because I get an email from Park and Rec, ask for an approved list of people in the harbor. And there's probably about a half a dozen people, maybe a few more than that, that actually paddle out to their boats in the harbor.
Who are out of state?
Not out of state.
No, sorry, non-Darien residents.
I don't know about,
That's not something.
each of them that I know about, they are Darien residents. I don't know anybody that's actually paddling out that doesn't live in Darien or is a non-state resident.
So this isn't so transparent to you how many out-of-towners are using our harbor for their moorings.
I wouldn't have a good number for you off the top of my head. I wouldn't. I would say there's a good. I mean, Norotan Yacht Club has a mix of members from different towns and even states.
Interesting.
Let me see here. Okay. Number 6. Rafting of vessels is only allowed on day moorings. Vessels cannot be rafted on berthing moorings. Rafting can only take place if there is a captain or passenger on the vessel. Rafted vessels cannot be left unmanned on a mooring. No more than 3 to 4 vessels, and that number we have to talk about. No more than 3 to 4 vessels may be rafted on a day mooring and provided they are not impeding a navigable channel or hitting other vessels. The harbor master at his discretion will disperse the rafted vessels if there is a navigation issue or the size of the vessels rafted present a risk of damage to the mooring tackle or dragging of the tackle. Now, one thing I wanted to address is currently the ordinances state no more than 3 boats can be rafted up in Darien harbors. It doesn't say Scott's, it doesn't say Ziegler's. Everybody knows that's what is meant. But if you read the ordinances, you actually could do it in a berthing harbor.
Interesting.
So, the other thing that's a bit of an issue, and I've spoken with Flip about it, and I've also spoken with Norm Edwards. He is the gentleman that, he's one of the contractors in Darien for moorings. The tackle in Ziegler's Cove probably has not been kept to spec. It's not been as closely watched and managed. Believe it or not, I would say probably almost half of the people who have permits in Ziegler's Cove do not reside in Darien. Many of them are from Norwalk and other towns. We have people from New York. I know of one gentleman who's from New Jersey, but he keeps his boat in Norwalk. The problem with this 3 to 4, and I'll draw you the scenario. You could have a boat. You could have 4 20-foot center consoles on a mooring with a 2,000-pound anchor. That would be a problem. But if I had 3 40-foot plus boats on a mooring with a 75-pound anchor, that technically is not a problem. There's nothing in the ordinances that state that, you could have tackle. If you had tackle to spec, it would still be a problem. The ordinances allow for rafting up. One of the proposals I'm making is that the tackle specifications in Ziegler's Cove need to be different than our berthing harbors. Now, this keeps in mind. This is also taking into consideration the Great Island purchase, which is going to make things much more much busier. So right now, if I went in there with my 28-foot boat, I should have a 500-pound anchor of some sort. Then I get 2 of my friends with same size or larger and come along. And that's just me. Then there's also, we know, and although it's not supposed to happen, we know that there's people who come in and use Ziegler's Cove who are not permitted, and they raft up also. The responsibility of the person who's permitted for the mooring, it is their responsibility to remove anybody from their mooring when they become aware of it. But seeing Ziegler's Cove, very few people live on the water, and there are permits in there for people who don't live on the water, because it's a day harbor. They have no way of knowing who's using their mooring. The problem is the tackle specifications need to be upgraded considerably for Ziegler's Cove. I would propose a minimum of 1,000-pound anchor for a mooring in Ziegler's. And if the boat is above 40 feet, it should probably be even higher number.
I understand the logic of, more boats and heavier mooring size, or longer boat, heavier mooring size. But in actuality, though, I don't know if we're really guarding against something. In that day mooring, people probably using it in good weather. They're not risking their lives staying overnight when a bad storm comes through. So, in some sense, it's like we're enforcing good boating practice, but does it really matter on a day mooring basis? And or
we had we had 4 moorings in Ziegler's Break last year. Torn out, pulled, chains broke, got dragged.
The dragging is
Yeah.
apparent to me. Now, did the mooring owners complain?
Yes.
It's sort of interesting that, because they in essence, by having a day mooring, choose to finance the cost of others to come and use their mooring. And I don't know how we can protect them from that unless they get information which allows them to see they should throw a 2,000 pounder down. Sort of a funny situation.
It is, but I think from a safety standpoint and decreasing the chance of damage to the tackle, you have to upgrade the tackle so that it doesn't get damaged. I mean, no, it's not right, it's probably not fair, but it's a known, and I don't know how it could be stopped.
So I've been there many times when there's 6 or more boats hooked up that are not small boats,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a party.
Yeah.
And storms come, you know, I mean, I described the storm that happened to me from my dock to the selectmen, and I was thrown off the dock. I think that you have to tackle that. I think it's really important. It's going to be particularly important because Great Island will open, and I'm very concerned about the safety issues around that. And I don't know how it's going to be enforced because I don't think we even have, it's not patrolled every day, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, the police do patrol it. I go in there from time to time. My practice has been so far is to see if the owner of the mooring is one of the boats rafted up. I confirm that, and then I send them an email letting them know that, you know, per the ordinances, you're only supposed to have 3 boats. You had 5. You know, if this practice continues in the future, you know, you may lose your permit. But on the other side, when it's no one who's permitted for the mooring, that makes it a little bit more difficult because
Why
Now-
can't you just go to that boat and say, I'm sorry, none of you are permitted, and there's 5 here, 2 have to leave. You don't have the authority to do that?
I do have the authority, but are they going to listen?
I think even the
And
police.
and how does it escalate? Because like you just said, it's a party,
I
so
think
you know what's been going on.
I think this is something that has to be dealt with because of what is, you know, this.
It's a
the
subject
public
that's
safety
come up
issue.
numerous times
Right, this is a
over the
public
years.
safety issue too.
But even from the past discussions we've had, it seems that even Marine police have declined to address some of the over rafting. And I'm not critical of it. I think what you get is a real party atmosphere, and it's maybe safer just to let it go and burn out, if you will, rather than try to cause the commotion, which happens every weekend.
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, it's a real.
I'm not sure good things are gonna happen.
No, it's, I actually have I'm not so, this is maybe expanding a specific thing, we should get onto this overview, but I'm not so satisfied with our approach to Ziegler Cove from a couple of standpoints. That it's a funny thing to have the private individuals from different towns stocking the moorings, and how do we control them with the quality of the moorings?
Well, that's easy. It's in your ordinance, you know, if you have a day mooring in this harbor because of use, it should be this big. I think you should write those out.
There's
I think those are very
Well,
fair things.
We have them. We have them. Those are supposed to be the standards for all of Darien harbors.
Okay,
It's not always followed. And getting back to the subject of people buying bigger boats, I started off with a 17-foot whaler in Ziegler's, and now I've got a 35-footer, and I've got the same tackle. So these are multiple faceted issues with that harbor. That's why my proposal, and it may be deemed as unfair to the person who's permitted, that now they have to spend all this money so that they can use their mooring, as well as other people unknown to them using it. Yeah. I don't, I mean, if somebody can come up with a better approach to protect the owner of the tackle by undersizing your tackle, it's gonna be damaged if you just go with what we have in the ordinances right now. Because if I have a 17-foot boat and I'm permitted in Ziegler's, I'm only required to have a 200-pound mooring. And then that following weekend, there are 3 40-footers hanging off of it.
This is where I wondered if that Ziegler should become sort of in concept of public park, where the town supplies the moorings, and they're all town moorings. And then you have more control over how they're being used and what the guidelines are.
Those are transient moorings. They're not under my purview. They're under the purview of the state.
Huh,
So
interesting.
you
When
would have to have-
it becomes a municipally owned thing?
Municipal or commercial, private club. The Norotan Yacht Club is in the process right now of getting all of their moorings permitted by the state.
But you are the state also.
I only permit recreational moorings for private citizens.
So it's not in your definition
Well,
of
that
harbor.
power comes from the state, but they've restricted what powers you can.
There's multiple players in the harbor.
Interesting.
I mean, when it comes to mooring buoys for recreational boats, that's me. 5-mile-an-hour buoys, center channel buoys, that's the state. Day markers, nuns and cans, Coast Guard.
Right, okay.
Another arm of DEEP is the docks. I'm just the most visible person in the harbor. There are many players in the harbor.
May I ask you a question? Is the Norotan Yacht Club, does the state have the regulations like yours for the correct size mooring and all that? Or can they put anything down they want to?
No.
I mean, just being in the lee of them, I just was wondering. That's it.
It would be one of those things where, this is where there's sort of a dance between town ordinances and, Darien does not have a harbor management plan. We have ordinances. So, there still is, there's an arm of the state rules that I have to enforce, and then there's the arm of the town's rules that I have to enforce. Now, the state does not control our standards for tackle. We do. So even though they're pardon me, I didn't mean to say that. Even though they're in Darien Harbor, they still have to abide by Darien's ordinances. But the permitting for those moorings does not come from me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In a different world and in a different time, I'd like to follow Bill's proposal, which is as a day mooring rolls off, as someone elects not to renew for whatever reason, the town becomes the owner, and we decide every quote-unquote day mooring is taken over by the town as part of the Great Island Ordinance. I'm really only thinking Ziegler's. We just put 2,000-pound tackle down there, and it becomes. You've been into other towns where there are some municipal mooring fields in Maine
Sand
and
City,
elsewhere.
for example, right across the way.
And then we could make sure that we inspected them every 3 years. We had adequate size.
Well,
Is it a town ordinance problem, or are we getting into state problems when we talk about Ziegler's?
well, they're state waters. I guess they're state waters. By going to these what I call what they're called as transient moorings, I don't know if that you actually solve for the problem. It's still going to be a mooring. People are still going to do the rafting up, unless you try to enforce no rafting.
But
in
we
Ziegler's.
would at least command the size. It would be ours.
Well, I'm going to be enforcing that. So I've had conversations. I've had conversations with the gentleman that manages Ziegler's Cove. I don't know that he, now let me take that back. He made the suggestion, he goes, with what's going on over there, the 1,000 pounds should be the minimum over there. He says, you do have people probably abiding by what's in our guidelines, but it's not enough for Ziegler's, knowing what goes on. So if we look at it that way, as opposed to being undersized, when I'm saying undersized, in some cases, yes, it's undersized. But for rafting up, it's almost always undersized.
Yeah,
John, why don't we just make an ordinance for Ziegler's Cove? It's a special place, there's just, there's now a public interest. Why can't you write up a special ordinance with respect to any day moorings in Ziegler's Cove, not anywhere else, because of the nature of the changes that are about to happen to our town? That every mooring holder will have 2 years to have a minimum of, that gives them a little bit of time. And to be honest with you, if they're not using it and they don't want it, there will be somebody else who'll come and take it. I mean, there will be somebody else who'll come and take it. I don't want to be disadvantaged to anyone, but, this is public safety at least. And it's wise anyway.
There is the need for, it feels like a regime change, given the Great Island purchase.
Yeah, there's a huge change
Well,
going on.
not only the tackle, but another thing, and I rejected a permit for a person this year because he did two things. He was originally permitted for a 40-foot boat. Without talking to me or the previous harbor master, he went out and bought a 53-footer. And now knowing how crowded it is in Ziegler's already, at some point you have to put a cap on how large of a vessel can go in there. It's tight in there already. Now we have people, and everybody's, like you said, 10-foot itis. That goes on everywhere. And I'm getting boat after boat after boat being larger. The 17 to 31 is a reality. That's actually happening right now in Ziegler's. Fortunately, the boat that was there before it was originally a 40-foot sailboat. So it's okay. But the boats that people are asking for permits are getting, 45-footer is not an uncommon thing to be asked for a permit now in Ziegler's Cove.
Wow. Reflection of this town, and the next thing you have is Mark Cuban's.
But it's not just our town.
Right.
Because half of Ziegler's is other towns.
so John, I'd clarify something I should have remembered from almost the beginning. Did you say that these regulations here, the recommended minimum standards, point moorings and Darien waters,
But that's my understanding, yes.
do or do not apply to Ziegler's and Scott's?
No, they do. They do
Okay.
apply to Ziegler's and Scott's. But if you're rafting up, they're inadequate.
Yeah.
And our ordinances say you can raft up.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying there needs to be, but maybe I haven't said it yet, but what I was
Supersized
getting to,
Ziegler's.
when I get further down here, if you get into, where do I have it? I have it somewhere in here. When we get to number 8, mooring tackle standards will include specifications for berthing harbors, day harbors, and Ziegler's Cove.
Good.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting very specific about Ziegler's
Yeah.
Cove because of the change.
And you can have Ziegler's sizes be different than Darien Harbor and Narone Bay.
Ziegler's is deeper anchorage. It's much more popular. Scotts Cove is a great place for a day harbor, but the larger boats can't go in there.
Right.
Once you get past half tide, mid tide, you want to get out of there if you're a large boat.
Absolutely.
I have a mooring in Scotts Cove. I've got a 28-foot inboard. There's 2 weekends a year I can't go on there. If the tide is right and it's a new moon or full moon, I can't go to my mooring because it's too shallow.
Yep.
So I'm not as worried about Scott's. You don't get anywhere near the traffic and you don't get anywhere near a larger boat.
And that's what we're all worried about with Great Island, which is the greater scrutiny. This is why John's here. to be honest with you, to make sure
Yeah.
that this stuff gets done. So, and it was acknowledged when we first got together for the, the years last month. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head with respect to what we need to do with Ziegler's Code, given the change. It's an enormous change, and I think you should have
Ziegler's is
have at it.
Ziegler's is our little bit of Maine.
Yes.
So you could take this up and go, here's a schedule for Darien Harbor and Norotan Bay, and whoop, here's a schedule for Ziegler's, theoretically.
The other
Including
thing,
boat size.
the other thing that has to be taken into consideration also,
Yeah,
if you go over to Ziegler's and you go over to Scott's, the day moorings, you've seen them, the mooring ball with the PVC pipe and the rope hanging over.
yeah.
That's not a specification that's in here. People were trying last year to bring it to Darien Harbor, and I shut it down.
What is that?
Because they're not suitable for a berthing harbor. By design, there's more chafe. Now, there could be improvements made to reduce the chafe, but with those types of moorings, the line comes up through the PVC pipe.
Yeah.
When you cut that PVC pipe, it has a bit of an edge to it, and you're always just slowly chafing at it. I had one person who had one in Darien Harbor 2 seasons ago, and when I discovered it, I told him you have to get rid of it. And he said, why? And I went down to the Norotan Yacht Club, I took pictures of his mooring ball, and the line was ripped to shreds. It wouldn't have lasted another season. And he'd only been using it for 1 season. So they're suitable when you're only getting used on weekends, but to ride the tides and the waves 24/7 up to 6 months out of a year, they'll break loose. They're just not good. There would have to be some significant changes to the design. I don't have a problem with them. I've had one of those day moorings in Scotts Cove for years now. I've never had any problems with it. I would never have it on a mooring if I was in Darien Harbor and on it all the time. Yeah, I know my boat would break loose.
Why?
Pardon me?
Why the difference?
Because of the chafing issue that happens. With the regular spec, you have 2 bridles that come up, and you should have chafing gear on the actual loops that go over your
chokes.
cleats.
Yeah.
You can't really I don't know if you could really introduce it in there, but the chafing is so much more significant because you've got the line going through
Yeah.
the cut pipe, and it's a sharp edge, and it just wears away at it. So for day moorings, I think it's fine, but for berthing, no, forget it. And that's why even if there is a berthing harbor in Scotts Cove, I tell the contractor no day mooring for them. It has to be full spec mooring that's in the town's guidelines.
Good. Good.
The thing that's nice about the day mooring balls is when you go up to it, it's easier to grab, and it's kept clean all the time. You don't have growth all over it, it's not slippery. When it's slippery and covered with growth, because it spends most of its time in the water as opposed to out, if you were to use a berthing mooring as your day mooring, 5 days out of the week, your bridle is in the thing. Now you go to grab it. It's slippery. It's dirty. It might have barnacles growing on it. It's fine. It's a good solution for a day mooring to have those types of mooring balls.
I just take my own bow line and run it through, so I don't
Some
bring that
people do that.
stuff onto my boat.
Yeah.
There's also the new type of line considered a little drum.
Well, they get the barrel moorings. Yeah, you
More expensive.
can get those too. They're more expensive. They're large. I mean, there's enough, but still, it's getting at it. Now you got to get a boat hook.
Yeah.
It's if you just pull up anybody with a day mooring, you can send. I used to send my kids up there, and they would grab it. When I mean kids, not young, but 14, 15, 16 years old, you can send them up there to grab it. When they've got to lie on their belly and try and grab it, it allows you to fasten much more quickly, which I'm in favor of. And when you're in Ziegler's Cove, getting hooked up quickly is the safest and best thing, and that's why I favor those in a day mooring situation.
Keep going, yes?
Yeah, let's keep going. I just want to,
Okay.
you had 3 to 4 vessels, right? I mean, we started this, 15 minutes ago, we talked about it. Which is your, what do you favor? 3?
3 what?
Hooked up, rafted vessels,
Oh.
3 or 4, or what do you favor?
It really depends. I mean, it's funny. If you've got 3 50-footers, that could be a problem depending on which mooring they grab
Right.
in Ziegler's. There could be 6 off in the far corner, up in the north corner. It wouldn't make a difference, and that's sort of where I said, that's where I put in the harbor master at his discretion will disperse
Yeah.
depending on the situation.
I just keep thinking, if you put 3 to 4 and you have 4, and somebody's gonna say, I have 4, and you say it's 50, and then, but
Well,
that's my discretion.
Here's the funny thing. In the ordinances, it says 3, but I believe it's one of the other pages on the town website. It says 4 if you throw an anchor over on the 4th boat, which is chaos.
Which is dangerous.
Doesn't work.
It's chaos. I mean, that needs to be taken off the town website.
By the way, when you enunciate a right, the harbor master's discretion will disperse I would assume the Marine Police would be relying on the same ordinances, so this should be written more broadly to include yourself as well as Marine Police. Yeah.
Right. But, yeah, point taken.
In the
I'll
ultimate,
just leave
in the
it there.
ultimate draft, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Permit holders may not rent out, transfer, or allow others to use their mooring assigned to them. A permitted mooring holder, berthing or day, will ask the captain of an unpermitted vessel to vacate their mooring once they become aware of it. Permits are granted for a specific vessel owned by the permitted. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, when we've talked about this before, there's been the nuance of partnerships for these boats, right? So
I have that in
is
the
that
next
separate?
document.
Got it, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Mooring standards were put for tackle, 3 different ones. Okay. Mooring permits allowed in a harbor. Most people just have one boat in a berthing harbor, and I should have put berthing in there. No, actually, it applied to any harbor. Most likely. So anyway, so we have people in Darien Harbor, 2 boats, two permits. That's been something that's gone on for a long time. I believe at one point you could even have it up to 3. With a wait list exceeding 200 people now, I'm thinking it might be a good idea to rethink the number of permits that a person's allowed to have, at least in a berthing harbor.
And what type of uproar would that cause? Do you know how many people would be affected by that?
I would do it through attrition. I've already come across I already had one person. I've had 2 people, maybe 3 people so far, who had 2 moorings in Darien Harbor, and as a result of asking them for their Connecticut registration, they no longer had a boat. That's where they tried to introduce partnerships, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I've been, in most cases, been able to say to them, you don't have a boat, you don't need the mooring anymore. And some people will relent and say, okay. Others get a little testy. The ones that are most difficult are the ones I talked about originally, where they have their boat somewhere else, and I can't do anything about it because the terms of the permit hasn't changed, because they're berthing their boat somewhere else and they've got a empty mooring. But I would think through attrition, we could, we're at 2, is 1 the right number? I think 2 is okay, but I think 2 is actually fine. It's just, we don't have it anywhere in our ordinances, how many you're allowed to have.
How many have 2?
Afraid you're gonna ask me that.
Does anyone have more than 2?
In Darien Harbor, I'm not aware of anyone that has 3. There was one person who had 3 at one point, but he surrendered it before I came on board. But it was my understanding you could have as many as 3, and I don't know if that meant Darien Harbor. I didn't know if that meant, I thought that meant Darien Harbor and then maybe one of the day harbors. But talking with Tom, and I hope I'm recalling this correctly, you could have up to 3 in Darien Harbor. And I just think with the wait list that we have, I think that's unfair.
I'm very sympathetic to the 1. It's a public good, and I'm generalizing, but it might be safe to say a wealthy person is taking advantage of a public good at the disadvantage of other people who may not be as wealthy. And so I do think a public good means a little more shared access. I don't worry so much about the guy who's got 3 boats, where he's going to put the other 2. There's a lot of marinas up and down the coast.
Right.
So I think it would be better to err on the side of a much lower number, like 1. I think that makes some great sense given our wait list.
Number 9, which we were just talking about, is very general. So it probably should be stated as no more than 1 permit in a harbor. So for instance, I could have a mooring in Darien Harbor. I could also have a mooring in Scotts Cove.
2 different types, right? A day
Right.
versus berthing.
Yeah,
So okay to have
but
1 of each, but not more than 1 berthing.
right, you can't have 2 berthing moorings for 1 boat. So you could have the day and the berth. That's it.
The
The
day,
day or the berth.
Or yes,
Or you could have 2 berthing
Or you-
moorings if you had 2 boats.
right. But you're never going to have 1 boat with 2 berthing moorings.
Right.
no, I was arguing against, if you have multiple boats, I was arguing against allowing someone to have 2 berthing moorings. I was
I
saying
thought you were
restrict to
just
1.
arguing against having like 2 in Darien Harbor, but if they have 1 in Scotts Cove and 1 in Darien
Well,
Harbor,
if one's
and
a
they've
day, I
got 2
think-
boats.
Well, I think if one's a day and one's a berthing, that's different. I would think,
Yeah.
we've got this big berthing wait list, right? The day wait list is, I don't even know what that is.
I mean, you'll wait as long, if not longer, to get a mooring in Ziegler's as you would in Darien. You'd wait longer to get a mooring in Ziegler's than you would in Darien Harbor.
Given that you can raft and you can anchor, I don't feel sorry for people not getting a day mooring, but people not getting a berthing mooring, that I find really bothersome, because you move into town, you're a young family, so you're
Right.
locked out. And there's some, person who's got a lot of entitlement because he's been here so long. He's got 3 boats and he's got 3 berthing moorings, or 2. I think that doesn't feel good. I don't think that's using our public good, maximizing it for our residents. It's arguable, but that's my opinion right on the spot.
So anyway,
That's, I think, a place where the commission can have a good voice. I think it may not be listened to, for selectmen may go another
Why don't you
direction.
think about it and let us know what you think? Come back to us with an ordinance, and we can talk about it more.
Yeah, I think that the coastal commission provides input from residents. I think, it's designed to have different members from different communities, right? I think it's a good voice to have a view on that and respond to. Yeah.
right.
And I apologize, I have to leave for another meeting in the auditorium in about 5 minutes.
Yes, we're coming up on 7. So, this is a great packet of stuff. John, you've done a wonderful job. We'll go a little bit process here, because John, we got you, and your head's probably more in process than we are at this point. What are we trying to do when? How can the Coastal Commission respond to this packet at this point?
I think it's a couple of things, that John taking input from the discussion and kind of revising what you've written. I think the other piece was just the presentation point, which is to create something where you can kind of march through what you're proposing here, but also have it compared in another column through, here's what it says now, and for you to say, not only here's what it says, but here's why this is problematic, and here's the language that I propose to resolve that particular problem. I think that'll make the discussion with the Board of Selectmen go much more quickly, just because it's laid out in a clear way like that.
Yeah, I guess for your decision on all this, I'd love for you to have the Coastal Commission's input. I mean, you're getting some of it now. This committee is probably the most where it is, but for us to sort of surface some of these maybe key issues with the Coastal Commission and feed that back to you.
Well, ideally, what you guys would come to an agreement and vote and say, this is what we want, and then this group would actually come to the Board of Selectmen meeting, maybe John's the spokesperson or one of you gentlemen, and then present that to the board, because in that way we know it's got your expertise, it's got the commission's sort of imprimatur and approval, and then it comes to the Board of Selectmen, and we're looking at it at probably a more high level, simply because you guys put all the thought into what we really need to do. And so,
Okay.
Makes sense.
Should we be trying to do this in the month of May?
so the only urgency with the Board of Selectmen is that we're coming up on voting season, and just to make John's life easier, I think trying to get these in place sooner rather than later would be good. At the same time, I don't want to rush this, right? It's got to be something where you feel that these are the ordinances that I want that, in your judgment, solve the problem. And you guys feel like you've had enough time to spend with them and can say, I'm familiar with what all this is, and I'm supportive. So I don't want to rush that, but at the same time.
John, is there any, let's say we came to agreement on 4 changes, we were unanimous, the board ought to approve it. We can come back next year, right? With another 3? There's
Absolutely.
It's not just a one-shot thing.
No.
No, yeah. Per the ordinances, I'm supposed to, if necessary, propose changes to the ordinances on an annual basis.
Now, the harbor
Can you
master
do it
is,
more?
the harbor master is painful at all times, and so we have to be
No,
fresh to
no,
the paint
I
that he
understand.
imposes.
Or we could schedule a meeting 1 year hence. How'd it go? And, you know, we can all take an assessment.
Sure.
Yeah, that's particularly important because some of these changes are non-trivial, and you'll want to gather feedback from people on the receiving end of these changes and see how it goes. I think that's the operative question next year, which was, okay, what do we think? But that's why getting these in place now, so you have the most of a full season to sort of road test all this would be good.
We have a member of the public, thank you, and your wife prior.
I didn't know what was going on. She said, there's a meeting about moorings, and I'm like, what? We could slide down there.
Well, it's helpful to have
Yeah,
someone here, definitely. Should there be more, another session, either at the Coastal Commission level or this working committee, where we invite the public?
That feels like another meeting of this committee, makes sense.
Giving the public access to what we're doing.
Yeah, they'll absolutely have access to that. There's no reason that these materials couldn't be posted as part of this meeting, and I suspect they are. But when you come up with the next iteration, that'll get circulated to the public. So all this stuff, televised, public, all documents, all that, there's no secrets here.
And that does bode for us not like trying to get this done next week, but rather maybe giving us another 1 or 2 sessions when hopefully people in the public are picking up.
I don't have a need to rush on this. You know, the ordinances that are in place, although not strong, have given me enough that I've been able to make some significant advances in the harbor already. We have a total of 35 openings in Darien Harbor this year through the work that I've done. That's either collecting paper, identifying abandoned moorings, people who have moved out. You know, I'm making advances.
Yeah, it's very telling, it's great.
These ordinances would give me more, but there's enough behind what I have right now. So we don't need to. I'm not saying let's not get it done. But it doesn't need to be done yesterday.
I want to guard against people coming back and saying the process was too rushed, and
Well, that's why I said, I
Yeah.
don't want to rush
Yeah.
this, right?
Can I just make a suggestion, because there will, I think that the place we're all worried about is Ziegler's Cove. Maybe what we do is focus on what has to happen there. If there's something that has to happen there, specifically to create a safer place, that you would suggest some ordinance changes, maybe we should not table everything, but put that on the front burner. And other things maybe, you know, if you feel, as you stated, that things are okay, not perfect, you know, we can, you know.
I think that the tackle is an important thing. Another thing I didn't touch upon yet was, as I've also spoken to the state about putting a 5-mile-an-hour buoy out in front of Ziegler's.
that'd be great.
We have one on the east and west side of Fish Island.
Which is a weird place.
We've got one, well, that's a pretty busy harbor also. It is defined as a harbor in Darien.
Compared to Ziegler's, it's a weird
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
But you get a lot of traffic over. You tend to. It's an interesting dynamic because I've done it, and it's when you tend to have younger children, you tend to go to Fish Island, and then as the kids grow up, you wind up going to a Scott's or a Ziegler's. I used to spend a lot of time at Fish Island when my kids were little. It's very busy over there on weekends. But, you know, Scotts Cove has a 5-mile, Fish does, Ziegler's doesn't. So I've looked into that, and interestingly enough, in order to get the 5-mile-an-hour buoy, I have to have Monica sign off on the application. So that'll be something I'll have to go to Monica about also.
To your point, there's no reason that all of this has to be presented all at once to the Board of Selectmen. If there's something that could be dealt with more quickly, like Ziegler's, come to the Board of Selectmen for that, so you can get that in place, and then pick up the ball for these other topics later, come to the Board of Selectmen again, so we're very flexible.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run, thank you.
John, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Let me know about the next meeting, and I'll.
Yeah. I have about 10 more minutes and then
All right.
I've got to go.
I'll just go over the other document quickly.
Okay, great. Thank
These
you.
aren't ordinances, these are more of informational. It's like the date of your application will establish your priority on the wait list. Boat size is important. Depending on the specification of the vessel, waiting time will vary and can be significant. If an application is submitted for 2 harbors, the first one that is accepted by the applicant will be permitted. As for the second harbor on the application, the applicant will be removed from the wait list of the remaining harbor. Now, this is a practice that's been going on. Many people just aren't aware of it. If an applicant wishes to be on the list for 2 separate harbors, then 2 applications will be submitted. I've actually come across people who have been on the Darien list and the Ziegler's Cove list, and I call them and I tell them, you've got, I have an opportunity for a mooring. And they say, over in Ziegler's? I go, no, Darien Harbor. Oh, I don't want one in Darien Harbor, but you're on the list for it. Oh, well, I just, filled out 2 because it said I could. So a lot of people don't.
3 options, yeah.
Yeah, people don't understand that. So
Yeah.
to spell it out would be good.
That's a great idea.
The procedure for making assignments from the wait list was as follows. When a mooring becomes available, the harbor master will contact the first applicant on the wait list that has an application for a vessel that is suitable to that area of the harbor and offer the permit to that applicant. If that person refuses the mooring permit, the harbor master will continue down the list in chronological order until an applicant accepts the mooring permit. An applicant may refuse the mooring permit offer only 2 times. After the 3rd refusal, the applicant's waitlist application will be canceled and a new application will have to be submitted.
Is this Darien Boat Club wisdom? The
No,
docks?
well, that is Darien Boat Club, but it's also a thing in Darien Harbor. I see in the notes of the system from my predecessor that offered this year, turned down, offered that year, turned down, offered this year, turned down. And I've actually come to some of those people again and offered, and they've turned me down again. So we have we have a couple of 4 and 5 turn downs in the system, and
That's just I don't have a boat now, but yeah.
they have a boat. They have a boat. I just don't understand why they want to pay the $15 and then refuse it every year. So it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of their time. I just wanted to put something in there. A waitlist applicant does not have to own a vessel to be placed on the waitlist. However, an applicant must define the specifications of the vessel that they intend to moor if awarded a permit. If a waitlisted applicant wishes to change the specifications of a vessel they wish to permit, they must contact the harbor master. Number 5, waitlist applicants must declare at the time of application if the applicant is for a partnership. A permit holder that creates a partnership after the permit has been issued will have their permit terminated. Applicants with littoral rights wishing to form a partnership with a person who does not possess littoral rights will follow the standard waitlist process. Now, people with littoral rights, if they ask for a mooring, they don't go on the wait list. If you read the last page, I think, of the packet I gave you, it describes littoral rights and how, what rights and provisions they're allowed. In my discussions with the state, they're to be given that access immediately. The issue that I've come across is people with littoral rights partnering up with someone else who may or may not really be boating anymore, and they're just giving somebody on the wait list a big leg up because the person that they're partnering with. So my recommendation proposal is, if you have littoral rights, yes, you get a mooring right away. But if you want to do a partnership with someone who doesn't have littoral rights, you go through the wait list just like everybody else. I think it's just fair.
As a concept, I agree, this enforcement discovery would be difficult, but you might. Depends how often the boat's used and who cites who and what.
I can't control who uses the boat, but the paperwork that they have to give to me has to show that they own the boat.
And so that would be liability.
In a lot of the situations that I've made discovery in the harbor, I discover someone else's boat
Wow.
on a mooring.
And then that's
That's when it gets contentious, and that's when they say, well, it's a partnership. And I say, if you want to do a partnership, it has to be before the fact, not after the fact, because you get a number of people who, they're done with boating.
So
And
will
they
this
just-
turn into ordinances? Will these 5 points turn into ordinances? Or will they be, they'll be posted somewhere?
It should be, my plan for this is to be posted on the harbor master's page on the town website. There's one right now.
So is it because these get more specific and some overriding authority you have on the ordinances allows you to do this? Or, because I'm wondering if some of these might be parsed back to the ordinances.
Yeah,
You could, my thought is you could have one of the ordinances, and I think there is something to the effect in the current ordinances that, per the harbor master's guidelines, these could be the guidelines.
Guidelines, yeah. Pick them up in any effect.
Yeah.
But it is,
very thoughtful, thank you.
It's been a great job, yeah. Really very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
You're doing
It's
your
been a
work.
lot, it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work.
Well, you're gonna make it a more equitable, one more equitable for the rest, the 200 people on the waiting list.
Yeah.
Which is great. You're gonna make it safer. You're not gonna have boats banging into each other anymore.
Mhm.
And that helps with, people who they wanna buy another boat, they can buy another boat, knock yourself out, but
Yeah.
you may not have a mooring.
Yeah.
And that's,
I mean, it's not like I'm saying it can't be done,
right,
but there could be situations, like right now, there's a number of openings in the harbor. I mean, I think there's a total of 35. So far, I think I've only assigned 15 or 16. The later you get in the season, the more difficult it is to find someone, because some people usually have contractual obligations with another marina or something like that.
yeah.
I'm also cognizant of the people not going too far down the list because just because somebody's tied up with a contract. I kind of have to balance it because I don't want to fill up the harbor with people who've only been on the wait list for 6 months, and meanwhile somebody who really wants to be in the harbor but can't because they outlaid a tremendous amount of cash to be on a dock somewhere else. So I'm working through it. I'm also working with the yacht club too, who's just overwhelmed with work right now, and they actually asked me to slow down for a week because I was throwing more at them that they could handle, because they're very, very busy. They're doing their inspections right now. They're finding tackle that is subpar and really needs to be replaced. So there's ordering and the work and everything like that. So we're getting there, but it's taking time.
So with respect to what's next,
Yeah.
would marching orders literally be, let's work on Ziegler's? What do you think?
Well, yeah, let's
What-
turn to
what do you
how
think,
the
Sam?
machinery of this committee's gonna work. So I think it sounds like we have one or two more rounds together, where maybe we sit back and read this stuff a little, maybe consult one-on-one or something, and then come back as a group again. Maybe and get Flip involved would be good, also, since he's had a lot of
I
involvement.
do
Right.
think that John's guidance would be immensely helpful, meaning either,
John Zagotsky.
yeah,
Yeah.
either the proposed ordinance changes are redlined into the existing ordinances, or they're
Totally agree.
compared in a total thing, so we can actually say, oh, well, this is sort of covered and
Right.
actually give it
I mean,
like that.
Like I said, many of these changes / additions, I'm proposing that some of them should just be added to the one-line
Yeah.
ordinance that they have, just provide
Understood.
more clarity.
Yeah.
Some of them actually are additions, some of them are just sort of an addition, true addition, and some of them are just in addition to an existing ordinance.
So if there's any way that you could just put the ordinance up and then slide these either in below them or
I'll
to the
I'll
side.
try. I am
Maybe
not a
can we
word.
get some,
I'm not a word expert.
Can
help
they
with
give you
respect
the
to some
ordinances
clerical help?
in Word?
You know,
Actually, I think you can export them.
Let's ourselves do that.
Let me see.
What-
Yeah, it looks like you can export them.
In Word?
You could do that. from the
Yeah,
scan.
you actually can. See the little icon right there? There's a
John,
word
can
icon.
we
Yeah,
try to do
I
that
do.
for you? Like one of us, until the next meeting?
I'd be honest,
we do that?
if you could, I'd love it because I'm up to my eyeballs in other stuff right
Yeah.
now. You know.
We'll figure that out amongst us, and
Okay.
I think the get together, I would love to think about all this some more. Like,
Sure.
read through a little more in depth and think about it, and then for us to work through that comparative might be really helpful to distill in our minds. And I might suggest that we schedule another meeting, and it may take another one after that, but after that, it would be nice to bring this back to the Coastal Commission as a whole, and not for you have to go through all this again, but for us to serve up a more
more
summary form.
finished. Like
Yeah.
basically what the select people will say, selectmen
Yeah, and us
people.
perhaps having discussion on key points and maybe resolving things that might be thorny there. But ultimately, if that Coastal Commission meeting didn't solve it, then the next one, where we'd have a vote to endorse what John's saying as modified, and let him then get on to the Board of Selectmen and any of us join that meeting.
Yeah.
So maybe we've got, 2 or 3 or 4 meetings between, one or two more call this a committee, 1 or 2 more committee, and then 1 or 2 Coastal Commission, and we've got a product that the Coastal Commission and this committee's blessed for you to march forth with. Does that sound fair to what you, I mean, you've done a lot of work and we're probably backing you up in some sense.
No, that'd be great. Any support you could give me would be great. There's just like I said, there's a lot of other harbor master duties, and it's very busy this time of year.
Sure.
And any support you could help me with this and preparing for the presentation would be wonderful.
Good. So we'll figure out how to do that comp amongst ourselves. And I
Okay.
don't know, do you guys want to set a date for another meeting, or do you want to float on your schedules and I'll come back to you in an email, but maybe do something in like 7 to 14 days? What do you think? I'd vote for 14 just for my personal schedule, but I'll go off the flow. And this would be for
14
us to
days
have a
would be
comparative
the
document,
25th.
having given things a little more thought.
14 days would be the 25th.
What's the Memorial Day weekend, the 29th, 30th?
Yeah.
The only Monday of the month that's difficult for me is the first Monday of the month.
Yeah, I've got issues on random Mondays of random months.
I have lots of things going on.
I can do
But,
other days, I'm free that way, but it's just the first
Was it-
Monday of the month.
So weekend of the week of the 25th might
Well,
be
the
good?
25th itself is
25th.
Thursday.
It was a Thursday.
Oh, it is?
I actually have something that night, but the 24th should be wide open for me. I don't know, that's a Wednesday. I don't know if do you have any time on
I
that?
don't care whether it's a Wednesday or a Thursday,
Okay.
frankly.
Yeah, Wednesday, and by the way, if John's not with us, we can do it during the day.
Yeah,
If you can,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. you're flexible enough.
Yeah, so I'll send out an email,
Yeah.
which will include Flip and John, and we'll see how that works for our next meeting date.
If we do take a sort of a tiered approach, not throwing all of the changes in the first year, to me, the most important ones, bullet points 1 and 2, creating that differentiation of berthing and
Huge.
day harbors.
Huge,
That's the building block for
So that's about the
everything.
most important thing for us to leave here with, is that knowledge that
Yeah,
in your own personal hierarchy, 1 and 2,
yeah,
to include the Zieglers.
Yeah, and to me, and with Rob's, the sort of separate out the Great Island Ziegler question is really the other really big thing.
Yeah, so if it's 1 and 2 in Ziegler, we can come back to you via email.
sure.
These
yeah.
are the 5 things we're worried about. I mean, I know I'm very
Right.
worried about what can happen in there.
Yeah.
There's too much tomfoolery with
Yeah.
people on the shore and just don't want it.
I mean, number 5, I'm effectively already doing. I'm already asking people for their DMV
Right.
registrations.
Right.
Number 6, if you 1 and 2 are the building blocks.
You have to
1
do them
and 2
first.
are the building blocks for 6.
Yeah,
Yeah. 7 might even be stated already in the ordinances. I think I just added a little more clarity to it. And then mooring tackle standards and the ones specifically for Zieglers. That's the one I think we can anticipate maybe some pushback from people. That's because the standards for the tackle will be more expensive.
yeah.
I sort of like that as a way to maybe ration, just make it more orderly. Maybe there'll be less mooring buoys, less, I don't know.
Did we agree on Wednesday the 24th, or is that still in?
I think that
Proposals
we
did.
agreed that I would send that out and see if all the other parties could come.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's what you'll see that from me over the weekend or
yeah. I'm gonna put
And
it
then- and then we're gonna do it. comp piece. We haven't figured out which of us. I think between the 3 of us, we
Yeah,
should
we'll
do
we'll
it.
figure it
We'll
out.
figure that out.
What
We have daughters
the word,
and sons.
the down, well,
Just put,
I'll readily do
supposedly
an editor on that.
downloadable in Word.
Maybe I'll
yeah, if
try
it's
that.
downloadable in Word, then it can be done relatively easily.
So we wrap up with that. I think this has done a lot. Good. This has been really helpful. Super.
And thank you very much.
And we are adjourned, or
Thank you for
what?
attending.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for all that you guys do. John, thank you so much for being our harbor master, doing that great job that you do.
What's your name, sir? You look very...
Edward Dendoven.
Sure.
Opus Dream.
Absolutely,
So, so
absolutely. We met
just
last
went,
year.
Yeah, we met last year, so I went
Right.
through the process to get a 37-foot sailboat out on a mooring, and it was a great process. And
Yeah.
the requirements for the tackle are perfect and everything, so it was really nice. So, yeah.
Are you in Darien Harbor?
I'm just gonna
I
adjourn,
am.
I'm just
Yep.
gonna adjourn us officially, we can carry on after social.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's a problem.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.